No worries. Hello, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. Just to tell you, I'm not a tanner, I am not a leather scientist, I'm purely an ordinary engineer, professional engineer. I've spent quite a long time in a number of industries, other than leather, but the last 40 years I've been quite intimately connected with the manufacture and the development of leather machinery. And since my retirement, I work as a consultant, and I still write. Many of you will know the leather magazine, World Leather. So I do write technical articles, machinery technical articles for that magazine. So there is an ongoing interest, and hopefully, talking about history, hopefully I can offer something to you. My own experience, of course, is machinery. The only contribution, apart from history, the only contribution I can make to the industry is what the mechanical processes do to leather, what they should do and what they don't do, and what bad things they do to it. This has been one of my subjects. Now, what I'm doing here, well, first of all, I'd like to say I have used as sources for my talk mainly, or probably only, American and UK sources. I searched continental sources, I searched German patent offices, French ones, I went to the Italians, and on that subject here of the splitting machine, nobody appears to have done anything. The Italians certainly produce the best, the most effective, the highest performance of splitting machines, but I don't think they've done much original development. So, a journey across the history of mechanical tannery equipment invented and sometimes adopted is actually taking us through a cluster, I call it a fertile cluster of years, from the mid-1700s to the end of the 19th century. Original concepts, often based upon classic manual practice, saw the light of the day during that period. Although this applies more or less across the range of machines, I have picked the splitting machine for the talk, because I think that it is one tannery machine where interesting and novel ideas took shape. It also took many years for a practical splitter system to evolve and to be established, specifically in the leather industry. Now, what I've done, I've based my talk on the chronological sequence of patents or published patents where I managed to establish sources. It's not entirely logical because sometimes there's a break in the chronology, mainly for the reason that I'm also dealing with the subject in three different ways. Splitting originally was carried out with fixed knives or blades, then the inventions and developments came to the so-called oscillating knives and blades, and finally we got to the third grouping, which is the bag knife machine. So again, that interfered with my chronology a little bit, but I hope you'll forgive me for that. At least it forms a base. We're starting off with a purely manual process, a process which was actually patented, as you see there in the UK in 1768. I believe that there was a demand for split leather. It could not be fulfilled because there was no satisfactory way of providing the desired splits in either the wanted quality or quantity. The manual method came about when, say, like bookmaking called for fine leathers. The leather worker then found it possible to produce very thin skivers by wielding a shearing knife across the flesh side of a skin, a calf skin or a sheepskin, actually held firmly down on the board, and simply slicing off bits, producing some non-usable offcuts, but producing a usable grain split, a fine grain split. So that was the beginning, I suppose, of it, historically speaking. From there on, we come into the first group of knives mentioned. It's the oscillating knife. Again, we deal with an English patent here. It's an oscillating knife based on holding the leather on a flat table. The oscillation took place by means of a rack and pinion mechanism where the guided knife was slid actually to and fro. I can't give you a drawing of this one and of some of the subsequent ones because the patents would not reveal that unless you go to a specialist society paying a lot of money for getting the full patent. So I didn't do that. I just got the written information. Anyway, in this system, a crank lever connected the mechanism was turned by hand, and doing at a fair rate of rotation produced a good rate of oscillation. The leather in the system was stretched out firmly, fixed on the table to present it to the knife. The table assembly on this pattern was mounted on a slide to feed the leather. And there's a system which could actually handle tanned leather. Continuing with the oscillating knife, we've got to get on to another English patent by Parr and two Bevington cousins or brothers. Again, a guided knife, oscillated axially, but the feeding arrangement was rather more sophisticated. Interestingly enough, it included a ring roller assembly consisting of a number of centrally bored discs running loosely on a small diameter axle. And this general principle, actually, funnily enough, in that year, is very similar to what is used on a modern, what is actually the roller component of a modern splitting machine. It improved accuracy of splitting and also improved uniformity based on subsequent variations of the leather. Again, tanned leather could be handled, and some fresh splits could also be produced. Now we come to one of my inconsistencies on timing. This is a curious thing which is called the Duxbury pattern splitter. It's a very odd thing actually. And again, chronology-wise it is in a different slot, but design-wise we're dealing again with a special type of knife. The inventor of a Heath Robinson affair such as this was actually preoccupied, which much complained about wrinkling caused by the oscillating splitting knife. It was also said that the oscillating splitting knife was responsible for cutting holes into the grain split, and apparently it also produced a ribbing effect on the grain side. And Duxbury must have investigated this and now claimed that the Duxbury design, his design, eliminated those drawbacks. The idea was completely new, completely different. It's based on an arrangement of knives placed on the periphery on quite a large drum, a 17-foot diameter wheel, he placed, in the patent anyway, he placed 25 knives around the periphery of this drum. The knives were protruding partly from the edge of the wheel, which, when rotated at a suitable speed, acted like a continuous cutting tool, almost like a milling action. The leather was presented to the drum by means of a curved feed roller, which you see down here at the bottom, curve to the same curvature of the knife drum, and which then fed the leather in against the rotating knives. An ingenious tool was added to it or incorporated in the machine to compensate for knife substance variations, and that funny thing actually consists of a series of plates suspended from a bar at the top. The leather was placed into the curvature of the feeding drum, and those plates pressed onto the leather and tried to compensate for substance variations. The feed roller itself, this is just a little detail of its profile, which again was based, that is the feed roller down here, which was based on the curvature of the cutting knives drum. I've just given you, for a moment, to look at this. This is actually a side elevation of the machine to give you a better idea of what it looked like. You have the drum, the thin drum, and you have the feed roller down at the bottom, again, which was so suspended that it could be moved and then pushed in against the knives in order to split the leather. It's all very complex, and there's actually, I found no record of it ever having been used in practice. But the talents are said to be highly impressed by the claimed splitting quality and the high rate of production. So take it from there. Now, we come to a really very important situation. In 1808, Newbery patented this system. He developed a band knife machine. He didn't develop it, he didn't design it for working leather. It was actually sawing wood. But again, this is the case so many times, there was a bit of transfer of technology, and he made provision in his patent for a device which was similar to a band knife splitting machine. What is surprising about this event is that this patent lodged in 1808. It took 46 years, I've said here. It took 46 years after the lodging of this patent for a practicable band knife splitter to actually making an appearance. In parenthesis again, 63 years further on, the most sophisticated splitting machine, today's most sophisticated splitting machine, still uses a mechanical configuration as developed at the time. About that I'll tell you a bit more later. Now we come to the family of fixed knives rather than oscillating knives. Again, an American patent, and there were 6 systems actually. We go through them fairly quickly, not in very great detail. Again, the Boyden machine had a fixed blade and a twin roller bridge feeding the leather to it. The leather moved through the gap between the rollers, which were turned via gearing by a hand-operated crank handle. The grain split was wound after the device onto a roller, turning behind the knife, turning behind the blade. Actually, this was quite popular at the time and used extensively, and I found out that an example of this device or machine can be seen in Philadelphia, in a leather or in a general museum. No, not in Philadelphia, it can be seen in the Newark Museum. I haven't seen it, but I have talked to somebody who has seen it. A minor patent, an English patent this time again, with a fixed knife moving against clamped leather. Fixed and stationary knife, leather fed by grooved rollers into opposing rollers, gripping it under pressure and then squeezing it against the knife. It was claimed at the present that the pressure exercised pushes the leather cleanly into the knife, producing a satisfactory split. Another English patent, the Stott system, which again, which actually is a more feasible system. It also used a fixed stationary knife on a cast drum with wooden ends attached, which were supposed to hold the leather firmly. The leather was stretched out against or tacked into the wooden ends and stretched out, rather like an old-fashioned nailing machine or nailing drum or nailing dryer. The leather was also held in a slot in a moving frame, by means of which it was brought up against the knife. To carry out the splitting operation, the drum was rotated as well as slid to and fro manually, made possible by the frame base being mounted in such a way that it could be traversed. Now, we're looking at a bit of hardware again, and coming back to an American development, the Osborne splitting device. The Osborne Company actually is still, this goes back to 1876, but the Osborne Company is still in business, doing quite a few things, including the odd leather working device. Here, he invented the possibility of inserting the leather between the feeding roller and the knife by means of opening the gap between the two, therefore firmly passing the leather into it, and then being able to pick it up at the other side and pulling it through. I understand in America some people still use this device, perhaps in the shoemaking industry, I don't know. Then comes an improvement, which is called the Sowerby invention, again in America, which has a bit more sophistication. The view shown indicates the position of the fixed knife, and for the first time in this type of configuration, we have scope for accuracy in substance setting and substance computation. It's this, we won't go into too much detail, it's this somewhat complicated device where the actual feeding roller rests on a spring-loaded lever which continuously presses the leather up and ensures that selected substance is maintained and that perhaps some lack of uniformity is overcome. I've come to the conclusion really that this is, in principle the thing is still an Osborne device. It's an improvement of the previously shown Osborne device. Again, a device still manually operated, not machine operated. The next patent, well, it's again basically the fixed knife with a roller. The improvement, I think again it is an improvement on previously large patents, is the fact that the substance could be set probably more accurately by means of this lever, which was graduated and enabled the operator to fix the substance he wanted. Now we come to a very odd thing. In 1983, well after the time when everybody was already using conventional band knife splitting machines, somebody came out with this thing, which was still hand-fed over a roller, and I asked myself why he did this, and I came to the conclusion that somebody, well, this guy who did it, wanted to overcome the problem we all know about, that to set up a splitting machine is quite a skilled job, a skilled and time-consuming job, and he wanted to improve that. So he came up, with this, again, graduated skill, scale is the scale, a lever, it's not a chimney, it's a lever, which you can pull down, and you can set the position of the feed roller, and then for good measure, he also had a graduated scale to move the actual cutting knife. Now, obviously, in those days, prior to electronics, a good idea. The only problem is, or was, that it could not be adapted to a band knife machine. So here we are back with some nice ideas about making life a bit easier, but not with a band knife. Despite that, the machine was in sporadic use in the United States, but I don't think it ever hit us in Europe. The next one is possibly still known to some of you, was the famous union splitter, the union splitting machine, which was used extensively after its invention. Very simple diagram here, where the knife was situated up there, the leather was inserted by means of the roller over the board, and then picked up on the other side, on the outfeed side, by a roller, clamped by a roller, which then rotated and pulled the leather through the device. It is, I believe it was said, that it produced an accurate grain split and also a usable flesh split. The machine apparently was so popular that it was used, certainly in the States, well into the 20th century, and only has actually disappeared since the end of the Second World War. Now, this leads us to the era of band knife machines. I selected this type of thing here. Apparently, one of the early band knife machines, also capable of using an oscillating knife, which was designed specifically for the splitting of bull hides, where the neck is extremely thick and the rest is then of lesser substance. So what this machine does, it enables you to insert your leather, and the machine actually, again interestingly, operates in a way so you can actually release the position of the knife. So what they did, they inserted the leather into the machine, and lowered the knife, split the neck, and once the neck was through, they could raise the knife and let the rest of the skin or hide run through without being touched. So you ended up, for the final splitting, with a much more even, uniform piece of skin and better accuracy. Now, this was one of the quite early developments of using band knives. The machine also, interestingly enough, operated in the principle of a multi-roller machine, such as you get in fleshing machines or shaving machines. In other words, the roller mechanism. I'm using the stick courtesy of your colleague, Richard Daniels, who lent it to me. The rollers, like on the fleshing machine or a shaving machine, were open. The leather was introduced into the machine, as I said earlier on. The multi-roller system closed the rollers and then pulled the leather out through the device. And when that was out, it could open again. An interesting combination. The idea of what was developed for fleshing and shaving, to combine that with splitting technology. Well, that gets us to 1854, which saw, I think, the very first examples of what I call the classic configuration, which all splitting machines, including the most advanced, the most modern ones, produced mostly in Italy these days, they all use that kind of system. Hence, I said this configuration is still the same after more than 150 years of development. I mean, you will all recognize the combination of the actual elements, which include roller and gauge roller, the knife position, and the possibility of adjusting the position of the knife. Now, I've reached up to date. I'm up to date, and I'm just closing my brief talk with this, showing this very latest splitting machine produced in Italy, of course, which inside the bits you can't see uses, as I said before, the same configuration as I showed you previously. I think the only difference, the only basic difference between today's modern splitting machine and the old type is the fact that you can attach a feeding device to the machine, reducing operator skill, and again increasing accuracy. You can measure substance, or you can predetermine substance on an electronic control board by sensing the size of the cutting slip, the cutting gap. And of course, on the other hand, you've got the, I think now well-known collecting devices which pull the leather out at the other side and disposing of grain split and flesh split separately. But as I said here, I'm not lecturing you on modern splitting machine technology, so we'll leave it at that. Yeah, I want to thank you for listening to a few technical and a few fuzzy explanations, which I can't do any better. I'd like to say that I have selected the history of machine splitting as it is special compared with most other, nearly all other tannery machine development, which it's genuine development, basically genuine development, whereas the rest of the equipment we use in the tanneries is mostly based on a transfer of technology from the textile industry or the woodworking industry or whatever. Best example, the introduction of the computer-managed tanning drum, which is direct, which is a direct transfer from the textile industry. So I thought here I could offer something really different and something genuine. I've also listed my main sources of information, which are up there. Very interesting information I got from the Vintage American Saddle Making and Leatherworking Tools book, and that would be interesting to other people as well, not just machinery people, because it covers the subject of leather manufacture as a whole. So if anybody wants to do a bit more research on that, I would recommend that particular one. Another one, very good on machinery, is something called Gerberei Machine and Tannery Machines by a German author. Then something comes from an engineer's encyclopedia, and the rest of the stuff I got through a patent search organization, which is called delphi.com. If anybody is interested in those sources, I've got a few copies with me of that list of sources. If they come and see me, I'll give them a copy. Well, thank you everybody for listening to me on a different subject.